So I think about behavior change quite a bit, because I think ultimately when it comes to even really chronic, complex pain cases, if you do the right assessments, if you take enough time, if you ask the right questions, the answer to the problem is generally fairly simple to find, straightforward to find. The hard part really is in changing the behaviors that have brought you to this point, and changing the daily habits that that have been keeping you there, and that are preventing you from progressing. So one way I think about it, and I didn't make this up, but what got you here won't get you there, is this idea that if you're in pain, if you've been in pain for a long time, and it's just kind of grown out of sort of perhaps out of nowhere after a series of lifestyle things rather than any traumatic injury, then it's likely that you've got certain habits, certain decisions that you're making in your day-to-day life that have brought you to this point, and we can't expect to move past that point without significantly changing your day-to-day life, the things you do, the things you believe. So I think about that a lot, because again, figuring out what the problem is generally straightforward enough. Actually changing it is the hard part. So one thing I was thinking about yesterday is that I don't drink alcohol, which is, it's not like a humble brag or anything like that. It's just a statement of fact. I don't drink alcohol. It's not a moral thing. It's not a health thing. I just don't particularly enjoy it, and that's it. And that's sort of part of my identity. I never really have drank alcohol, and for example, if I started drinking, my friends would find that odd, because as far as they're concerned, PA doesn't drink, and that's the way it is. So it would be out of character for me to not drink. But it's also really easy for me to not drink. I don't have any urge to drink. But if you took someone else, and not even like an alcoholic, but just anyone who drinks socially, who has a drink every now and then with friends, if you told them that they can't drink ever again, they would probably find that really hard. And it's not because I've got tremendous willpower or anything like that. It's that my not drinking is part of my identity, and it's easy for me to do that. Same way it's easy for me not to smoke. I know I'm not addicted to cigarettes either, but smoking is not a part of my life. So addiction aside, all of the habits surrounding that don't exist for me, because I just don't smoke and I just don't drink, and so it's easy for me. But then there are other things that are hard for me, because to change those would be to change my identity and the kind of person that I believe myself to be. And so what got me thinking about this was, I heard a podcast there a few weeks ago now, but they told this story about a girl in school. One day on the first day of school, she memorized everyone's name, and everyone thought that was pretty impressive, that she was able to remember everyone's name. And she liked that everyone liked that she remembered the name, and they were impressed by that. And so she kind of made that her thing, perhaps among other things, but it became her thing that she's good at remembering names. And I doubt that she had any kind of genetic potential that was, any genetic reason why she's good at remembering names. It's just she did it, and she got some sort of dopamine hit from being praised for that, and then she was like, yeah, this is my thing. Because you hear it all the time, people say, I'm terrible with names, I'm no good with names. And then you hear things like, I've never been flexible, I'm not a flexible person, I'm not a healthy person, I'm not whatever. And you see this in clinic. People come in and they've got all of these stories about who they are and what kind of person they are and what kind of person they aren't. They're not the flexible person, they're not the kind of person that can do that. And perhaps what I'm thinking, perhaps it's as simple as changing that mindset. And that's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying perhaps it's that simple. Maybe you are the kind of person, because there's no reason why you can't, say someone comes in and I say you need to do 30 minutes of mobility every day, and that you need to be the kind of person who has a mobility routine. And they're like, oh, I can't do that. But you can. I don't really care who you are. You can do that. It's physically possible for anyone to do that. But people will say that they can't, and they've got all sorts of stories and whatever, and that's fair enough. You know, I've got my own stories about what I do or what I can do and so on, and I can work through that myself. So it's not to say that I'm perfect, but it's to get the conversation going on with regards to this. So how much of what's holding you back and what's preventing you from really engaging with that mobility practice, really engaging with your health and figuring out what foods you tolerate, what foods make you feel good, what day-to-day activities make you feel good, what's stopping you from doing that? What story are you telling yourself that's, you know, means you're not that kind of person? And that gets into a sort of bigger discussion, because then invariably people will say, well, you know, I don't want to be in pain. And I get that. Like, no one wants to be in pain. I certainly didn't want to be in pain for all those years. And there's a distinction between what's going on consciously. Consciously you don't want to be in pain, but subconsciously perhaps it serves you to be in pain, at least on some level. Or at least it serves you more than the threat of the unknown. If you've been in pain for like 5, 10, 20 years, the idea of not being in pain changes your entire life, and that might sound great, and I think it should sound great, but it's also perhaps quite unknown, and the unknown can be maybe more scary and more painful, more potentially painful than doing what you've always done and remaining in pain, but getting the little wins that you've gotten used to. So what I was saying is that you can have people who there's social gain in being in pain. So you know that I'm sure everyone has experience of this, but someone has health issues and it's, you know, not their fault and whatever, and that's fair enough, and this isn't a blame game, but they everything kind of revolves around the fact that they have this health issue or they've got pain, and they gain from that because people are like, oh, you okay? And they send stuff and they help them out and they get more attention, and obviously that's perfectly understandable, particularly if it's going on for a long time, and it makes sense for that to happen in the initial stages. You're in pain, you're struggling, so you get support from your community, from your friends and that sort of thing, from your family, but then that keeps going on and you never really get past that, because you gain a bit, you gain that attention, you gain that sympathy. If that goes on for a long time, maybe it's subconsciously better to stay there than it is to confront and be the kind of person who would change the lifestyle, who would have a better sleep pattern, who would be more hydrated, or whatever arbitrary healthy behavior you want to talk about. So this is actually, you know, kind of a big discussion. I'm not the first to bring it up, but it's also something I'm not hearing that much of, and I feel like the whole mobility discussion, the whole being healthy discussion we know that even if we don't know the specifics, we know that we should be healthier, we know that we should move more and do more mobility, even if we don't know how exactly to do it. But we don't necessarily know that we should change our mindset, and that maybe it's as simple but not easy, as simple as being the kind of person who would do a mobility program, who would go to bed early, who would, you know, put their phone on flight mode, or on, you know, dim the brightness or whatever, you know, 2 hours before going to bed, or buy blue blocking glasses, whatever it is. Maybe it's as simple as making the decision to be that kind of person. So maybe I'm just waffling. I think there's something to it. If you think it's a load of waffle, let me know. But if you think there's something to it and you're interested in this kind of stuff, even if you're kind of resisting this and you think, oh, you know, who does he think he is and all that, and let me know as well. Sometimes you need to have these tough conversations, and sometimes, you know, my aim with this is that maybe there's a little moment where you start questioning what you're thinking, questioning what's been happening, and you begin to look at things differently. So let me know what you think, and I think long term my goal is to be, I'm still figuring this out, like I said, I'm kind of thinking out loud, I'm still formulating my thoughts, But let's have this conversation, and I'm going to start working on, I think, some sort of course, some sort of resource where we tackle this side of things. Because the good thing about this is that you don't necessarily need to come into clinic for a treatment. We can have these discussions online. You can do a lot of this work on your own. So there's a lot of potential there for helping people anywhere, and I quite like that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that, and hope it made you think a bit. Have a good day.